Welcome back to my opinion. I wasn't too sure about making a video about this because I'm going to talk about the strikes and my opinion on where we are with these strikes. And before I do that, I will say this. I think currently in 2022, we are living in the worst political class I've known in my lifetime. And I'm 48 years old. I was born in 1974. And I'm not saying that back in the day, in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, the 90s, it was better. I'm not suggesting it was. I'm not suggesting it probably was just as bad as it's ever been. I don't believe for 1 second that cesspit of snakes has only just appeared. But in my lifetime, when I became aware much more of what was going on, I believe you could see the corruption coming through and the self-serving coming through, the poison coming through with Tony Blair, and then with that Labour government, and then with the likes of David Cameron and the Tory government, and then everything that happened with Brexit, COVID. It is just, they are just disgusting. They are just poison. They are, I don't know how to describe. I honestly can't articulate how angry and I am frustrated I am how the political class has let the the people of the United Kingdom down time and time again. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. But that being said, I don't support any of the strikes. I think the postal workers, they have their head up their asses. The competition now for a company that is subsidised, a private company that was sold off and it is propped up by government, is subsidised by the government, has decided to strike in the busiest time of their year. And one of the things for postal workers is there are so many other options now. I honestly think you've actually just shot yourselves in the foot because people will just now seek out. I mean, already today I had to send something recorded delivery. I went to my post office and they're like, does it need to be there before the new year? I was like, no, not especially. And she just said, because honestly, they're not going to get this. If it's important, they're not going to get this before January. So I'm looking maybe first, second week in January for a first class recorded letter. There's a couple of things I ordered a couple of weeks ago, still not turned up. And they were tracked items. And when I look at the tracking, the post office still has them. So I've already written, one of them I buy is actually coffee beans. I buy my coffee beans. I've already drafted an email to send to them saying, for my future orders, can please not use the Royal Mail? Because I don't want to wait for things. That's why, if it's free delivery, couldn't give a shit. You get what you give. But if I'm paying, and I have to pay anywhere up to £5 to have something delivered, use whoever you want. The reason I'm paying for the postage is I don't want the inconvenience of waiting for something. So I honestly think the Post Office Royal Mail has shot itself in the foot, and I think it's just another nail in the coffin. I'm not saying their work is fair, and I'll get to what I think the solution is. I'm not saying it's not difficult, but you're not in a position to strike. The rail workers, hey, guess what? We're getting screwed by petrol prices, diesel prices. We're getting screwed over by shitty bus companies, and routes are constantly being closed down. And people are being more and more being forced into cars. And rail workers want to strike. For what? For more money again. For an organisation that's subsidised by the government. Okay. You all want money. I get that. We all want money. Every one of us does. And then you've got the NHS, the National Health Service, which is shit. The only endearing quality of the National Health Service is it's free. We don't have to pay for it in theory, but we fucking pay for it in taxes. Can't get an appointment with the GP. Can't get to see a GP. I pay for my prescriptions. My main job is in healthcare. Last few times I've had to visit hospitals with clients, one needed an emergency, rang the ambulance, were told, do you have the facility to take them to hospital yourself? Because there were no ambulances available. Okay. So we drove the client to the hospital. He spent 36 hours in a fucking wheelchair waiting to be seen by a doctor at A&E. Then he finally got a doctor and got a bed. 36 hours and we had to drive him in. The next time a client needed hospital, guess what? Ambulance did come. The ambulance had to wait 4 hours outside of A&E before they could get him in. What are we paying for? Can't get an appointment with the doctor. When you do, they just brush you off. The service is terrible. It's absolutely appalling. And they pay millions to bullshit diversity managers, equality managers. You're a health service. Your job is to deal with people who are sick. You're not fit for purpose. And I, for one, do not in any way, shape or form support privatisation of the NHS. But it's going that way. And it's going that way because you've become militant. And it's going that way to all of these people. You all want more money, but zero accountability for quality of service. Right? I just came back from Germany a couple of weekends ago. I was in Munich. Used the rail network. It was brilliant. Used the bus service. It was brilliant. Now, it's a city. I get it. It's a bit better than rural areas, no doubt. But nobody is complaining about the services. No one. And the people in this country, they're constantly, and this is my issue with public workers, and I've been a civil servant. I've worked for the Ministry of Defence. I've worked for Wiltshire Council. Right. The problem with all of these people is they don't understand how money is made, because they don't provide a service that is profit based. They don't provide a service that is customer based. Yeah. The bin men went on strike. I seen a news report today that the bin men will not take out a wheelie bin if the lid is frozen, because it's not their responsibility. Now, if I put my bins out overnight and there's a frost, empty the bin. How hard is it to lift the lid, lever the lid open? It's not that hard. What's the issue? What's the problem here? I grew up in an era where bin men would tell the elderly and the vulnerable, you leave that where it is. That's our job. Our job is to do that, not yours. I mean, we're one step away from having to go and empty the bins ourselves. Well, what's the problem here? When are people going to accept what their job is, what their role is? Like I said, my full-time work, I'm a care worker. I don't get to come in and bitch because somebody needs looking after. That's the effing job. So that's ran over. And that's why I can't support these strikes. Because you're not even providing a good service. You're not even doing a good job. My second reason and problem, which is my problem with all public sector services, is governments don't have money. Money comes from taxpayers. So every time you lot go on strike for services my tax pays for, that money eventually comes around to more being taken from me. And here's something I want you to think about. Because if you're a public sector worker, do you really pay tax? Because the money that you get given comes from the tax pot. Comes from that big pot of money raised by taxes. So all you're doing is giving money back to the pot it came from. Whereas I only add to that pot because I get paid privately. So I add money to that pot. And at the moment, I'm not receiving services for that money. Not services that I'm happy to pay for, because they're shit. And this is also the cost of COVID. All those people that wanted lockdowns, all those people that wanted furlough payments. Now, here I do stand with people like the NHS, because like a care worker, we went to work every day, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. We never stopped, nor did the shopkeepers, the shop assistants, the delivery drivers, the bin men, the train drivers, the bus drivers. We all carried on. And millions of people, public sector and private, office workers, took furlough payments. And the government handed it out like it was fucking candy. And nobody wanted to go back to work, and everybody wanted another lockdown. Well, now the people that worked all the way through that and never got any bonuses, any payments, any time off, we're expected to pay the debt that created. Well, that debt is on you. Anyone that took those furlough payments, that debt is on you. So, last point. I do blame the politicians, the successive governments. The big one is everything from benefits to child tax credits. The more you give people, the more they depend on it. And again, you give them all of these benefits, all of these tax credits, and then you raise taxes to pay for them. Stop taxing people. Stop giving people money. The war in Ukraine, foreign aid, the bullshit going on with the migrants and staying in hotels, the bullshit in the public sector of diversity managers and equality managers, and the middle management in some of these places like the NHS is appalling. Okay, get a grip of the actual finances. There is shitloads of money in the system, and stop handing out bullshit PPE projects to your mates. Scrap the green tax, lower fuel duty, raise the VAT threshold and lower the cost of VAT. Lower everyone's taxes. The more money you give people, the cheaper it is for us to live. It doesn't matter whether you're the biggest supermarket in the UK or the corner shop. Energy prices have gone through the roof. People cannot afford to turn a light on, let alone their heating. Fuel prices keep going through the roof. We can't even afford to deliver goods, let alone get in a car and drive somewhere. Like drive to a job that's not paid for by the taxpayer, so that the tax that goes into the pot actually stays there. And I can imagine, even for public services, their fuel bills have gone through the roof as well. Taxpayers are going to have to pay for that. You've got to bring down the cost of living by giving people more money. All of these people who are striking because of the cost of living. And it's going to push up inflation even worse. Because the more money you give them, the more money we've got to give them. You're going to take it away from us. So scrap the foreign aid budget. Scrap anything for migrant. If they don't come here legally, I don't care if you send them home or not. Don't give them any money. Stop raising like this bullshit about benefits being raised with the cost of inflation. Reduced inflation by reducing the cost of living. 90% of the healthy adults in this country are happy to go to work. They are happy to do a job. What they don't like is getting paid after 40 hours a week and looking at their money and feel like they've been royally shafted without any lubricants. I don't like going to the petrol pump and paying nearly a third, if not half more, because of fuel duty. Scrap, just cut it right back. I'm not going to stop driving around. Stop giving money away to people. It's basic house economics. If I was sat down looking at your budget of a basic householder, I'll just eliminate things you don't need to do. How much money does that save? If you allow people in this country to be independent workers, Honestly, we have so many grafters, so many hard workers in this country. They will just go to work. But people won't work because it's just not cost effective. It's not financially viable for people to work. You're making it impossible for people like myself to justify going to work. I've worked all my life, like so many other people. So let me know what you think. Leave your comments below. Thank you for listening.